to help bookstores. So that's on August 6th. So yeah, if you check on Twitter, the Antibody series, I'm putting that up here now. You can keep up on all the news about that. Cool. Well, I think we should get started because we've got a big lineup here tonight. You guys are I remember in the beginning, I used to have to give instructions about keeping your mics on mute, but you guys are such a good audience already. Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Gresko. Welcome to the Antibody Quarantine Reading Series, part of LitHub's virtual book channel. And tonight, here in collaboration with Epiphany Literary Journal, to celebrate the launch of their new issue, The Borders Issue. I am so grateful for Epiphany as a journal and an institution which has been supporting authors and providing readers beautiful, moving works of literary art for over 18 years. And I'm grateful for everyone here for sharing your Friday night with us as we hear from some of the authors whose wonderful work appears in the new issue. As I mentioned just a moment ago, it's been about 4 months that the Antibody has been hosting online literary events. And though we are not physically present with one another, we are united in our attention and our love of literature and connected through the voices of the authors as they read and talk with us about their work. So I will ask you now, as I do always at the start of these events, so you join me wherever you may be in taking a deep breath and just settling yourself back, hopefully with a snack or maybe a glass of something to relax and enjoy the show. This is a community that's gathered here tonight from all over the world, but as I also mentioned, I am coming to you from Brooklyn, where professional grade fireworks for the past few nights have been going off sometimes right on my corner. So that's a warning. If you hear bangs on my end, they're just adding to the celebratory spirit. For yourself as an audience member, I ask that you please keep your mic on mute for the duration of the event. We don't have a stage, but we have a microphone, and we will honor the authors as they have the microphone. And we have 8 authors here with us tonight who are going to read to us. Those authors are Steve Chang, G Guzmán, Kimiko Hahn, Marcy Rae Henry, Vida James, Omar Sakr, Mary South, and Ghassan Zeineddine. And at the end of the event, there will be a time for a Q&A, so be ready for that. And the chat is public and will stay public so that you can show your appreciation for the authors. But before we do that, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you the guiding star of Epiphany Literary Journal, Editor-in-Chief Rachel Lyon. So please get your fingers tapping and your keys clacking and give a warm welcome to Rachel Lyon. Rachel, the microphone is yours.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Brian. Thank you. I'm so so I have to say that selfishly, I'm glad that this event is happening on Zoom because I feel like we're very excited to have contributors from all over the world reading with us tonight, and B, I can join from my exercise ball in my office. So that's happy for me. But I'm also I'm so grateful to all of the contributors to this issue. You know, this issue was a real, it was a big undertaking, and we worked really hard on it, and it really turned out so beautiful. So I wanted to take a moment to thank all of you, and even the contributors who are here tonight who are not reading. Anja Riebensam is here. Anja, do you want to say a quick hello? Anja designed our cover. She is the source of the beautiful painting that is the cover of our issue. Where are you, Anja? I see that you're unmuted. Okay, maybe we'll come back and thank everybody later. We also have, let's see, Lena Valencia, who is one of our fiction contributors. Her short story, Dogs, is really killer. And it was such a pleasure to work with her on it. Lena, do you want to say a quick hello? Did I unmute you? No? Okay. Well, let's clap for everybody anyway. Let's see, who else is here from the issues? Sirkan Gorkhan. And it was such a pleasure to work with her on it. Lena, do you want to say a quick hello?
Hello.
Hi, Lena.
Oh.
Hi, Rachel. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for including me in this issue. I'm thrilled and honored.
Thank you for coming. I wonder if there's a way that I can share. It looks like I'm not able to show everybody's video, but I'm glad you guys are here, and I'm glad we're able to celebrate you. I'm sure other people will join. We actually had like 70 something registrants. Oh, there he is. Hey. Hey, Sirkan. But over the course of tonight, maybe more people will join, and then we can go ahead and raise a glass to them. I have my sparkling kombucha here. But without further ado, yeah, I think I just want to say thank you. I also want to thank the people who are part of making Epiphany possible. So here we have Simona Blatt is here tonight. She's our poetry editor. Now she was assistant poetry editor for this issue, and we're really excited for her to stick around for the next issue. Simona, hello. We have Miracle Jones, our intrepid operations director, without whom this issue would not be a book. It would just be a bunch of Word documents, poorly organized by me. Alex Gallagher, one of our interns, is here. Hi, Alex. And Haley Santra, our assistant development director. Hi, Haley. Okay. Well, I won't name everybody, but I just want to say that this is a huge collaborative effort, and it takes a lot of attention and a lot of coordination and a lot of talent. And Miracle Jones has just shared the link to buy the issue, if you haven't already, in our chat. So I would encourage all of you to take a look. The digital version, the ebook version, is available immediately if you want to read it right now, or you can order a print version, and those will go out around next week, maybe the week after. So you can hold it in your hands, and whatever your preference is, it's available. So, okay, without further ado, thanks, Brian, for collaborating with us. I really love the Antibody. I think it's been a real source of light for a lot of us in quarantine who are starved for in-person events. So we're so excited that you're collaborating with us tonight. And I'm going to pass the baton back to you to introduce our readers.
Cool. Thank you, Rachel. It's my pleasure. It's an honor, really. And I'm so excited. So let's, without further ado, just get to it. Steve Chang. Steve is our first reader for the evening. Steve is from the San Gabriel Valley in California. His work has appeared or is forthcoming in Guernica, J Journal, North American Review, the Southampton Review, Wigleaf, and elsewhere. And he tweets at, and Steve, I'm going to put Steve's Twitter handle up here. And I'm going to pass it over to you because I want you to pronounce it, because I don't want to mispronounce it. Please welcome everyone. Get those fingers tapping and give a warm welcome to Steve Chang. Hi, Steve.
Hey guys, how's it going? Yeah, just before I get started, I would like to say thank you to Brian and to Rachel and all the team at Epiphany for putting this event together, including Miracle. Hey guys, so if we can we just get like a little silent hand going for them for all the efforts. Yeah. What do I want to say? Wow, it's really strange. I haven't talked to this many people in one room for a really long time, so It feels both like really public and also really intimate because I'm like in my own space and it's kind of bizarre. So just a little bit nervous. So tonight I'm gonna read a little bit. Should I read from the work in Epiphany or should I read something else? Is there a preference there? Rachel, Brian?
Why don't you read from your piece in Epiphany? Yeah.
Okay, let's
Love
do
it.
that. Okay. So all we really need to know for this one, I'm gonna read a little snippet from this story. It's called Out on the Lake. And what we need to know is that there's a few young men and they're gonna take a little fishing trip out on the lake. And one of them, his name is Buddy. He's the only white one among them, and he's about to go off and join the war in Iraq. And as sometimes happens with young men of that age, there's going to be a lot of like unspoken feelings and things like that going on. Okay, so they're headed out to the lake right now. Okay. Buddy. Buddy's folks had shotguns in the bedroom and a Chevy Silverado in the driveway. His great granddad had purchased lots back when only white folk could, when what would become our city was still ranches and coyotes. The rest of us had come in the 80s. Around here, a family like his was getting to be an anomaly, is what I'm saying. All this must have played a part in why he joined the Marine Corps, why he talked like he was putting us on some real Americana the whole drive down to Irvine. All the way there, he hyped the lake, how his dad had taken him on birthdays, how the trout were as long as his arm. I caught Terry in the rear view, lifting an eyebrow. Who cares, I thought. This was Buddy. In 8th grade, he'd thrown a football 70 yards without trying. Our PE teacher, Mr. Munson, had lifted his shades to track its flight. On the spot, he called Buddy to the sidelines and asked him to play QB for intramurals. Pushing back his sandy bangs, Buddy had laughed and said, "For what?" Before then, I didn't know you could say things like that, but instinctively I knew what he meant. The whole theatrical farce of the sport. All this running in the sun, a bunch of sweaty boys in rumpled shirts, chasing and grabbing. What were we trying to prove, and to whom? Buddy trotted back onto the field, punching his hand for the ball. And this, I thought, is what I have to become. It was Buddy's world, and we were lucky to be in it. If he wanted to go fishing, we went fishing. It wasn't that hard. Out on the lake, Buddy took us to spots along the banks, talking about air temperatures and lures and stringing our poles. We were all in better moods out there, on vacation from ourselves. With Buddy back in charge, we settled in, and the sun burped up into the sky, blazing hot and hazy. We almost lost the mood for a moment when Shenwei said, "Hey, Buddy, can I ask about Iraq now?" Without looking his way, Buddy yanked the cord on the motor and said, "Why, you want to go?" The boat picked up speed. I cut in. Look, I scooped up a handful of the lake and let it trickle between my fingers. It's slippery. You know how nasty that is? This water's like 1,000,000 years old. Buddy yelled, "All water is 1,000,000 years old." He laughed. Only he knew what I was up to, how to talk in sleight of hand. We got to others arguing. Terry muttered, "That's impossible." And Shenwei said, "You mean dinosaurs swam in this?" We switched to trolling, our rods locked in along the back. And with the motor droning, I could finally drift away. I stopped listening and focused on Buddy, how while he locked eyes with Terry and Shenwei to chat, still he guided us, his hand on the tiller. This would be a good day, I thought, and that's what mattered, that Buddy would look back, think fondly of us all together, of the hum of motion and the sloshing of lake water, and take with him the voices of his friends. With all the drowsy beers and driving, it wasn't long before I'd fallen asleep. In a moment, I was darting through the murk, sleek and flashing. I could hardly be seen. I flitted through towering weeds, in and out of wavy shadows. I didn't know what I was, only that my body was responsive. When I wanted to propel myself forward, I willed it to happen, and it did. A dream like that lingers. I woke the body shaking my arm and the impression that I'd been caught. The lake was lapping away, the shorelines distant. We were stopped. In the absence of sound, a spotlight had been switched on. Then Buddy was yelling about our rods in the back. You got something there, bring it in. I staggered across the rocking boat and heard Terry mutter, of course it would be you. I took up the rod and yanked at the fish. I spun the reel herky-jerky. When I tugged, the fish tugged too. I sensed the force of its will. When I let it swim, it only slipped further away. I had the feeling I was struggling against my own mind. Only Buddy had any know-how about the outdoors, so it had been okay, his baiting our hooks and tying our knots, but reeling in a fish seemed different. Any man should be able to do it. I turned to him, and he took the rod from my hands. It's all right, he said. I'll show you. I flashed, ashamed. The others were on me. Figures, said Terry. And Shenwei said, soft. But what could I do? Sometimes you have to take it. I shook my head and agreed. I glanced at the others in case they had more shitty things to say, but no. The focus had all shifted to Buddy. He worked the fish smoothly, pulling back on the rod and spinning up the slack, so wholly in his element, like an Eagle Scout from the pages of Boy's Life. I stepped away as the others crowded him, yelling. His muscles tensed under his drab olive t-shirt, stretched tight across his back. In another world, I could have hidden in his shadow forever. I touched my own arms as if they were his. I've been working out too, comparing my body to photos I cut out from Muscle and Fitness and stashed under my mattress. I checked them while I stood in front of the mirror, holding one or another beside me. Only in reflection could they be scientific. If I looked at them in bed, they'd be something else. I thought I was coming along okay, my body taking the form it would take, but the others weren't treating me any differently yet. I started to suspect they never would, that nobody would, that no matter how I looked, I'd never be seen the way I wanted. What did I tell you, Buddy was saying. He had the fish finning alongside the boat now, a dark green and silver blur. He reached in to scoop it, and I swear it slipped into his fingers willingly, as if returning to him. It knew what it had to do. It didn't even flop when he dropped it in the cooler. And there's more, it goes on like that, but yeah, that's about it for me. Thanks.
Cool, thank you, Steve. Everyone, get those fingers going. Show Steve some love in the chat section there. Thank you so much. That was really great. A dream like that lingers. I wrote that line down. I really love that. I also, Steve, as you had mentioned, is such an interesting. Just doing these kind of readings are so interesting. We are both together but not together, and we're getting these like views, these little windows into where each of the authors calling from, and it was lovely to hear the birds singing as you were reading, and those are your birds, but we all had a moment to share and hear them. So thank you so much. We're gonna keep moving right along. This is a real pleasure. The next reader is someone who has read for the Antibody before, Roy G. Guzman. Roy was born in Honduras and grew up in Miami. They are currently pursuing a PhD in cultural studies and comparative literature at the University of Minnesota, where they also received an MFA in creative writing. Their work has appeared in Best New Poets 2017 and elsewhere. And it's such a pleasure to welcome Roy Guzman back to the Antibody. Roy, where are you?
Hi, Brian. Thank you so much, everyone. I don't know if y'all can hear me. Lovely excerpt that you read, Steve. I want to thank Rachel, and I want to thank the whole team at Epiphany. I think that, yeah, I've been reading this journal for a while, and it's such a dream to appear in these pages. I'm going to read 2 sonnets for you tonight. They're inspired by Tom Kiefer's photographs. And yes, the first one is titled Sonnet with Seized Brushes and Combs by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Blue synthetic bristle brush. Red wide tooth comb. Pink wide tooth comb. Blue wide tooth comb. Neon wide tooth comb. Old vented brush. Metallic synthetic bristle brush. Green wide tooth comb. Red synthetic bristle brush. Red synthetic bristle brush. Orange wide tooth comb. Pink vented brush with teasing brush. Green rat tail comb. Black and white wide tooth comb. Old vented brush. Black round brush with green edges. Mirror red detangling brush. Black natural bristle brush. Blue wide tooth comb with a black handle. Yellow tooth comb. Violet tooth comb. Wavy red tooth comb. Half of a blue tooth comb. Gray rat tail comb. Onyx colored crochet. Yellow telephone cord shaped scrunchie. Green elastic hair tie with jade flower. Purple hair claw as if praying. Pink wing shaped hair clip. Twin hair clips. Rubber band. Double-sided comb. Terracotta comb. And the second sonnet also appears in Epiphany. It's not available online, so this will come in through the issue. Sonnet with seized cell phones and chargers by U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Verizon, T-Mobile, Nokia, Boost, Samsung, LG, Motorola, Tigo, Alcatel, Movistar, One Touch, Digicel, Claro, Yes, Cricket, 4G, Flip, No Signal, Too Far, Will Anyone? We're lost. They busted us. The pink one. Please, señor, anda cargador. Señorita, eso es lo que andaba buscando. You come alone. Páseme con ese bandido. Extra pockets serene. When a dead man pours seeds all over the earth. Fractured screen. White keyboard. A giraffe is imitated. Aleph energy. Todo está bien. Widescreen. Text as straddle. In the dream, I burn wax to seal the letter. Faces turn to each other. Whispered, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Roy. Thank you so much. I'm just gonna take a moment there just to let that sink in. Thank you. That was beautiful. Please show Roy some love in the comments in the chat section there. Thank you again, Roy. It's a pleasure to see you read again, hear you read again. Let's see, moving right along here. Our next reader is Ghassan Zeineddine. Ghassan lives with his wife in Dearborn, Michigan, where he teaches Arab American literature and creative writing at the University of Michigan, Dearborn. His fiction has appeared in the Georgia Review, Witness, Fiction International, Iron Horse Literary Review, and The Common, among other places. He is currently co-editing the creative nonfiction anthology, Uncertain Refuge, Voices of Arab Detroit. Please give a warm welcome to Ghassan. Hi, Ghassan.
Hi, Brian. Well, thanks so much for doing this, Brian, and thanks so much to Rachel and the amazing staff at Epiphany for putting the issue together, for putting this reading together. It was just a pleasure working with Rachel. And it's an honor to read tonight, especially among such wonderful contributors. I'll be reading the opening pages of my short story titled The Hole in the Kitchen Floor, which is primarily set in southern Lebanon. And the story begins in 1996. I use an Arabic word, teta, T-E-T-A, which means grandmother. The afternoon, Maryam discovered the hole in the kitchen floor. The cherry and apricot trees were in bloom all over the village, and she had just started to lose her baby teeth. She returned home from school to find her father climbing out of the kitchen floor, the lower half of his body still underground, and her grandmother kneeling, trying to pull him out. Maryam's father noticed her standing by the stove, and his eyes widened. "Go to your room." She fled, closing the bedroom door behind her. Her father rarely yelled at her. She feared she had disappointed him. She slipped off her backpack and looked out the window. A blue songbird was crafting melodies in the oak tree. Beyond the tree lay the terraced fields of a fruit orchard. Beyond the orchard, arid hills. In the distance beyond the hills lay Israel. Maryam had never seen an Israeli, but she had heard their fighter jets soar above her house and seen the white streaks they left stretched across the sky. Her front tooth came loose and she pulled it out. That night, Maryam's father came to her room. She sat up in bed in the dark. Moonlight slanted through the window, illuminating the outline of Adam's frame in the doorway. He was the biggest man in town. His hands were the size of bear paws, and his thick black beard was shaped like a massive clamshell. Maryam wondered how he had even fit in that hole in the kitchen floor. He sat down on the edge of the bed, the mattress sinking under his weight, and she smelled the outdoors on his skin. "I was repairing a pipe in the kitchen," he said, his voice deep and soft. Maryam wasn't convinced. "What's down that hole?" Adham's face stiffened. "A big fat ghoul that eats women and children. Your teta was cooking lunch when the ghoul broke through the floor. I was out in the orchard when I heard the noise. I came running in with my shovel and scared the creature away. If I hadn't been there, it would have eaten Zainab." Maryam pulled the covers up to her neck. "What if the ghoul comes back?" "I've sealed the floor with special cement." He stood up from the bed. "Don't ever mention what you saw to anyone at school or in the village. If you do, the ghoul will find out and come looking for you." The wind rustled through the leaves of the oak tree. A dog barked. The smell of her father lingered in the air. She wished he would come back and lie next to her to lull her to sleep, but he had never done such a thing. The floor tiles creaked. Something groaned. She flung her blanket aside and ran down the hall to her teta's room. Zainab was sitting in an armchair by the open window, smoking a cigarette. The white streaks in her black hair glimmered like sequins in the moonlight. "The ghoul's in my room," Maryam said. Zainab gestured for Maryam to sit on her lap. Maryam sat facing the window, her back against her teta's soft breasts. A lighter, a pack of Marlboros, and a glass filled with milky Ada were arranged on the sill. Don't worry. Zainab's breath smelled like burnt licorice. No one fucks with me. We should warn Baba, Mariam insisted. Zainab took a long drag on her cigarette. Let him sleep. Mariam turned around. What does the hood look like? She's got green snakes for hair and thorns on her tongue. I'm about to shit my panties just thinking about the ugly bitch. Zainab lit another cigarette with the one still burning in her mouth. Ash fell on Mariam's shoulder. Now sleep. Mariam fell asleep to the sound of her teta's deep inhales. In the morning, she found Zainab boiling strawberries as usual in the cauldron over the fire pit in the backyard, a cigarette dangling from her lips, and a massive wooden spoon in her hands. Twirling dervishes of steam rose from the cauldron and dispersed as she stirred the fruit. Adham was out, working in the fields as a hired hand. I left you breakfast on the kitchen table, Zainab said, her face red from the heat. In the kitchen, Mariam searched under the table for traces of the hole, but the tiles were all in place as if nothing had been broken. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Please, everyone, give a little love and appreciation to Ghassan in the chat there. Thank you so much. It's interesting you mentioned birds, and I instantly thought of the birds that were tweeting at Steve's house. Birds are a theme. And yes, Roy has a great comment there. I love the dialogue as well. So very funny. Really great. Cool. All right. Well, moving right along, our next reader is Marcy Rae Henry. Marcy is a Latina born and raised in Mexican America, the borderlands. She has lived in Spain, India, and Nepal, and once rode a motorcycle through the Middle East, which is something I hope she one day writes a book about. That sounds fascinating. Her writing has received a Chicago Community Arts Assistance Grant and an Illinois Arts Council Fellowship. Miss M.R. Henry is a digital minimalist with no social media accounts, and she is working on a collection of poems and 2 novellas. And she is joining us here tonight. So please give a warm welcome to Marcy Rae Henry. Hi, Marcy.
Hi, saludos from Chicago. Hope you can hear me okay.
Yes, you sound great.
Thank you. There's a huge thunderstorm going on out there. My windows are that way. So you may hear thunder and see lightning, and maybe my dog will jump into my lap at some point. So just so you know. Thank you so much, everyone, for the opportunity and the support. I'm so excited to be here reading with all of you. So this piece is in the issue. It's called, She Needs to Know My Skin Isn't Whitening, But My Hair Is. It scares me to have my lists taken away. Wax, stamps, parchment. When I stay awake in the blackness, squinting myopically on my side of the border, I challenge myself to write letters to Z and seal them in envelopes before I regret them. Wolves cooperate on the kill. They can follow a scent across the Rio Grande. In the letters, I ask her to bring me things I need in the desert and draw crude maps where the road forks in my direction, but I don't ask when she will return. Thread, turmeric, tulips. She needs to know I am brown, but not embarrassed. I am naked at least twice each day. I just have to remind myself to stop dying in the feminine way and to buy more things. Whetstone, oil, lemons, linen. While the wax is drying, I write different endings to our story. They always include the ceremony she suggested, where we lick bee syrup off each other's fingers. And just when I make progress, I erase and start over, pressing on the pencil so the indentations will still be available. In a wolf pack, only the dominant male and female breed. No question who would be top dog were Z and I wolves. She is monotheistic, foreign, but exotic, so she can come and go as she pleases. At times it pleases her not to respond or to ignore my need for matches, kindling, kissing. When she lived with me, she'd wake at half day and walk through the living room half naked, her tips poking at her t-shirt, implying flight at any moment. Sometimes she would bring me sunflowers. More than once, she tossed my enumerations into a bin filled with ground coffee and piles of peels and rinds. The victors gave us a saint and a prayer for lost things. Hard to say if she is lost or just gone. But if they keep bringing us old world diseases wrapped in blankets and plastic and setting the dogs on us, I'll have to keep shifting south and she might never find me. Even a lone wolf seeks out another wolf because wolves want to belong to each other. If Z comes back, she'll have to be transparent as a palimpsest and stop washing me off her. Then we can update the guest list and buy things to hold a ritual. Honey, silver rings, hair dye. I have two more short ones. This one is called Bleach Really Does Expire. One day, any poem with the virus in it will sound dated. Anytime I see computer in a poem, I stop reading. When I was in college and someone said, I got a virus at the computer lab, it sounded sexual. People used to get it on in the stacks in the library, stifling moans among stacks of silent reference books. Now, smile, you're on camera notices are everywhere. My debit card has been compromised lots of times. The bank always asks, did you let someone else use it? As if they could talk me out of the paperwork of fraud. Fraud is another word that does not belong in a poem. I don't belong in a poem, but here I am typing one out, clickety-clack. Well, some people figure out a way to do their work from a computer with the camera, and others rush to the lab to try to come up with a vaccine, which is vacuna in Spanish and sounds like a cow in a cradle. The virus has taught us so much. Bleach really does expire. If it's potent enough, it can kill weeds, and if diluted, it increases the longevity of freshly cut flowers. This last piece is called You Can't Really Drink Out of a Cactus. Even though Hollywood says nothing holds fresh water like the plant that protects itself. Mis tíos drank beer out of cans and asked us to bring them one after another. We were like the H in Español, silent, a placeholder, la audiencia. Some of us swore we'd never grow up and marry tipos así. Some of us swore no casarnos, to be rara, like the ñ or el acento in text messages. Would Hollywood have us laughing as we flashed forward to my prima's husband snapping mole-covered fingers at her, demanding, tráeme otra tortilla? Would it show her telling him, get on up y tráeme una chela, with music swelling in the background? Maybe it would show my familia looking at her as if she slapped him, as if she tried to drink water out of a cactus. Los del desierto know that unless it's a special barrel cactus, the green goo inside a cactus sickens you, maybe even dehydrates you to death. Even Hollywood knows that insulting your marido might get you una cachetada. Y no hay laugh track at the border. You're not always sola, but you're on one side or the other. Un acento isn't todo lo opuesto of the H in Español, which bolsters the letter next to it. Ser soltera isn't the opposite of being married. Who thought to bring the cactus inside to be a houseplant? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. What a powerful last line. Thank you. That was amazing. And no lightning outside, but just lightning in the verse. Very, very powerful. Thank you so much. That was really great. Yeah, please show some love for Marcy in the chat and comment section. That's so nice to see. Keep it coming. You know, take a moment, refresh your drink. We're halfway through our program for the evening. How are you guys doing? It's Friday night.
Maybe I noticed that our poetry editor has joined. You want to say a quick hello, Mahalo? Mahalo's behind really the whole theme of this issue. It all started with a conversation between the two of us back in November, which feels like 1,000 years ago. But Mahalo is a poet, a wonderful poet in her own right, and is also editing an anthology on the poetry of diaspora and migration and immigration. And so really she's behind this whole theme of this issue and really responsible for a lot of the wonderful poets that we ended up publishing. Are you here, Mahalo? Do you want to say a quick hi? It's very hard to manage this. Maybe she's not here.
Silence falls.
Oh well, maybe later. Let's move on. All
right, Mahalo, if you're here and you change your mind, give us a shout out in the comments, and we'll make some space. Cool. All right, moving right along to Vida James. Vida James, who is joining us from Brooklyn, New York, where she is from social. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Vida James is from Brooklyn, New York, where she was a social worker with immigrant and homeless youth. But she is currently a Delaney Fellow at the University of Massachusetts Amherst MFA for Poets and Writers. Avona Voices alumna, she is currently working on a novel about the AIDS crisis in New York City. Vida, apologies for plowing too far ahead in your bio there. Please, everyone, give a warm welcome to Vida James.
You must have been just very excited about social work. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thanks everyone for coming out tonight. And thanks for giving me an opportunity to wear lipstick for the first time since March. Okay, so this is from the issue. The short story is called Domestic Animals. And what you need to know for this portion of the story is that a woman is with a friend visiting someone in detention center who they don't know. They're supporting someone. Okay. Everyone in the waiting room is smiling. Smiling as you put your things in the locker, smiling as you sit on a metal chair bolted to the floor, smiling as you avoid eye contact, smiling as you remove your earrings and watch and empty your pockets, smiling still when you watch others break down in sadness, their masks cracking under the strain. A woman is there to see her husband. She's wearing a camel-colored sweater dress, her hair brushed to a shine. She has knee-high boots on, which are setting off the metal detector. She takes them off and walks through in stocking feet. The guards mock her, joking that she is dressed up for her man, that she's trying to look cute for these illegals. The woman smiles, tight and bewildered, and softly says she came from church. An elderly woman is there to see her son. She's wearing thick sneakers and 2 layers of nude stockings. She's taken a subway to a train to a bus. Her journey lasted over 2 hours. After waiting her turn in line, she's told her son was in a fight and can't have visitors. You hear her relate this injustice to someone sitting next to you, a stranger to you both. She begins to cry and decides to leave. Soon after she's gone, a guard comes out asking for her, saying her son can be seen after all. The stranger who heard her story runs out of the detention center into the cold. After 20 minutes, they both come back, the stranger having found her at the bus stop down the road. She has 10 minutes left to see her son. Regarding Guillermo Sanchez de la Rosa, you both decide Guapo will visit first, as he has experience. He is wearing his uniform, black head to toe, a curated balance of thrift store chic and anarchist confrontation. As he goes through the metal detector, it yells in a tinny voice, warning, warning. He will need to remove his steel-toed shoes. The guard tells Guapo to estimate 15 minutes because there are no clocks inside. For psychological reasons, the guard explains with a grin. Guapo blinks and smiles back in a placid way before disappearing behind a pair of doors. In the waiting room, the television plays talk shows you haven't seen since the 1990s. You decide to put money in Guillermo's commissary via touchscreen kiosk. There are options for both credit and cash. The credit doesn't work, however, and you only have a 20. The corporation running the commissary takes a $5 cut of each transaction, and you think the $15 Guillermo Sanchez de la Rosa would have left would not buy much more than some instant ramen noodles. Still, you feed your 20 in, and through this process, you learn his birth date, August 21st, 2001. He is 18 years old. You wonder if this information is correct. Because you put your watch away, it is impossible to know how long Guapo's been gone. On the TV, women whip off their wigs and shoes to the delight of the audience. Eventually, you are startled by Guapo standing next to you, telling you it is your turn. You move robotic toward the metal detector. What does he look like, you ask? Sitting on the back, in the right, with long hair, Guapo yells across the room. You are aware that no one else here is visiting a stranger. You are aware of the unbelonging you have always felt as a first-generation American. You pass through the metal detector holding your breath. You are waved through and reach the first set of heavy doors. The guard buzzes you, but just as you reach for the handle, she stops and you're pulling on a locked door. You look at the guard and she buzzes again, but stops when you reach the handle, then a third time, and a fourth. You make eye contact with the guard and the air between you crystallizes into sharp edges. You are saying without speaking that she is stupid and petty, and you know why they call cops pigs. With her small, hard face, she is saying that she knows what you are with your dyke haircut, and she hates you. Just as you open your mouth to speak, she buzzes you in. You are led into a small room full of families. No one is looking at each other, no one is speaking, and there is no information. After a moment, you wander over to a large locked door at the back of the room and see through thick glass a row of seated men. You tap on the glass, aware that your 15 minutes with Guillermo are ticking by. A guard saunters over and asks in a monotone if you'd like to go in. Yes, you say, attempting to keep the desperation out of your voice. The door opens with a metallic zap. In contrast, this room is loud. Facing each other, there are 2 rows of soft gray chairs connected at the edges. In each seat in the row on the right is a man in an orange jumpsuit, leaning and murmuring to the person in front of him in the row on the left, which is mostly women. Your eyes glide over each orange figure as you look for Guillermo. A young man, right in the middle of the line, is looking at you with velvet eyes. Guillermo, you ask, and he nods. You make your way to the seat across from him and ask if you can give him a hug. He says, yes, of course. You embrace him for a long time. You want to replace every moment of human contact he has lost.
Thank you so much, Vida. Thank you. That was powerful. Really appreciate it. So good. Yes, so good. Show some love for Vida in the comments and in the chat there. That was absolutely powerful. That was really amazing. So I'm gonna kind of let that sink in for a second. Thank you again, Vida, and thank you everyone for showing some love in the chats. It's always nice. It's we don't have aren't able to give a round of applause, but it's nice to show the authors that were there. Moving right along, Kimiko Hahn. Kimiko is the author of 10 books of poetry. She is the winner of the Shelly Memorial Award, as well as fellowships from the New York Foundation for the Arts, the Guggenheim Foundation, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Please give a warm welcome in the chat there to Kimiko Hahn. Hi, Kimiko.
Hello. Hi, can you hear me okay?
Can absolutely hear you. I can't see you.
I'm right here.
There you are. The mic is yours. You got it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I am going to add my thanks to Mihala. I hope she is here somewhere. And Brian and Rachel, and thank you, Epiphany. I have a little bit of a show and tell. I know Epiphany because I have a wonderful chapbook that you all published many years ago called The Cryptic Chamber. And I'm especially happy to be reading tonight because my new book came out, Foreign Bodies, but there was no book launch. Very sad. I'm going to begin with a poem from Foreign Bodies. The poems that Epiphany took are super tiny. So I'm going to read a longish one first from my book, Foreign Bodies. The poem is called Alloy, an apostrophe to Isamu Noguchi. And in it, I address the sculptor whose dates are 1904 to 1988. And he worked in stone, wood, paper, other media. For this, as I said, longish poem, you should know that his father was a Japanese national and his mother, white American, which is to say that Noguchi was a child of mixed race, as am I. Because he was a resident of New York at the start of World War II, he was not required to be detained in one of the United States Japanese internment camps that, as you know, imprisoned Japanese immigrants and Japanese Americans. Excuse me, at the Noguchi Museum in Queens, a couple years ago, I saw documents and photos that showed that this sculptor actually volunteered to go into the Poston Internment Center in Arizona. So those are just some details that pop up in the poem. Alloy, an apostrophe for Isamu Noguchi. Is stone the opposite of dust? And if so, are we then stone before dust? And before that, some kind of betwixt, the mush inside, a translucent chrysalis turning cellophane clear when, of a sudden, you can see the monarch throbbing and scratching its way into air. Unlike a centipede that lays its eggs, even curls around them with her 100 feet. You said that, living in Japan, our house was filled with centipedes. I became rather fond of them. I lost my fear. You know, when you kill one, the two halves just walk off. Surely they played in your mind all the way to your piece, even the centipede, molded from Ibaraki clay, though you felt, in a medium like clay, anything can be done, and stated, I think that's dangerous. It's too fluid, too facile. Under your instruction, I'll find what is too fluid for me and turn my scratching away from facile to fossil, using hammer, chisel, and drill if lucky enough to come across the right quarry and ask nice enough or pay enough for a crew to blast out the marble, unless the material is residue from something else. Glacial pain, I mean glacial moraine, from my house near the Sound, where a glacier once aborted boulders onto these lean beaches. I pick up a rock, rounded and chipped in the surf, then back home, like those who set jizo on boulevard altars in Kyoto. I tie a bib around its belly, then place it on our mantle. Like those women, I too remember my baby unborn from betwixt and Japanese. Japanese, like those on the land where dust storms blew farm families to smithereens, then blew desert through rows of barracks surrounded by barbed wire and gunner watchtowers. Even orphan babies with one drop of Jap blood were seized from whatever charity for bowls of dust. And you, Noguchi sensei, volunteered yourself into this incarceration limbo with the goal to build a baseball diamond, swimming pool, and cemetery. You entered Poston internment where you knew yourself a Nisei, that is, without the rights of a citizen. Request, of course, denied. Not for nothing, you were despised on both sides. And as for centipedes, I'm not so much afraid as squeamish, which is different, and I've never killed one by cutting it in half, so I don't know about the two alive sides. The split selves not seeing eye to eye I know only too well. You knew, and I know differently from parents who realized alloy only from without, whereas the coy wolf, say, realizes coyote and wolf, even if the composite isn't brought to light. Maybe light is the opposite of stone. Say, lightning that cracks inside a cloud, or coral that glows below the surface of the sea, or the full moon that illuminates the shoji of the falling asleep boy. I love the fireflies serenading signals patterned according to kind. Kind, something our parents did not essentially heed. In my mind, stone, water, light, etc., all come down to dust on a moth's wing that's evolved to keep her patterns cued for a mate and to keep her blanketed in the stunning night. In my mind, an alloy is ultimately practical because, as you commented, to be hybrid anticipates the future. You also admitted that if you only have clay on hand, then from clay, even the centipede is cast. I'm going to read this one. I have two very short poems in the Epiphany border issue. Thank you very much for taking them. They are both an odd little form called a triolet, and you will hear what it is and what it does. So this is one of the two triolet. The Dream Act. The border comes and goes for hands and feet and words. No matter city, personality, or rose, the border comes and goes. Yes, from crown to toes, for coyote as well as bird. But the border never goes for this child's dream words. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Kimiko. Thank you so much. I already see some love in the chat. Show her your appreciation. That was amazing. I'm sitting over here jotting down lines. To be hybrid anticipates the future. Wow, so great. Thank you so much. And to a reminder to the audience and to the other authors here tonight, we've got two more readers, and then we'll do a very short Q&A sesh. So if you've got a question that's brewing for the authors tonight, get it ready, because it will be your time to shine in just a moment. But right now, it is Mary South's time to shine. Mary South. Mary is the author of the short story collection, You Will Never Be Forgotten, with FSG Originals. She is a graduate of Northwestern University and the MFA program in fiction at Columbia University. For many years, she has worked as an editor at the literary journal Noon. Mary is also a former intern in the New Yorker's fiction department and a Breadloaf Work Study Fellow. Her writing has appeared in The Believer, Bomb, The Collagist, Conjunctions, Electric Literature, Noon, and Words Without Borders, and on The New Yorker. The writer Malay Malloy awarded her story, Not Setsuko, an honorable mention in the Zoetrope All-Story Fiction Contest. And Mary lives in New York City. Please welcome Mary South.
Hey, thank you. Thank you to Brian for hosting such a wonderful reading series, and to Rachel and the whole Epiphany team for publishing such a wonderful issue, and including my story in the issue. I'm honored to be among so many wonderful writers. So yes, it's part of my collection that came out in March, so please check it out. Give a short shameless plug for it. Check it out if you like what you hear tonight. Since this story is the second story in the book, a little bit of context. It's about an assisted living facility where Elderly men are dialing phone sex hotlines because they're lonely and they're looking for a connection. The narrator works there as a nurse, and his girlfriend makes a connection with one of the men at the assisted living facility. So this is sort of, it starts halfway through the story. She's sort of developed a fascination for him. It's called The Age of Love is the name of the story also. From Los Angeles, New York, Miami, and Detroit, from Denver, Seattle, and DC, Jill wanted to talk dirty. Whisper the latest sweet nothings of Mr. Rogers in my ear, she'd say. Once she stopped by the home late at night on her way from the airport. She marched in bright and chipper with her roller bag as if she hadn't been working constantly for the past week. Where is he, she asked. Can we spy on him? Reluctantly, I agreed, hoping he would become not so intriguing. We took the elevator up to the butternut wing. Each wing was named after a different kind of squash, and tiptoed past Mr. Rogers' quarters. He had dozed off to a novel, reading glasses nearly tipping off the cliff of his nose. Jill watched him for a couple minutes, then left without saying another word. Around the time she visited, a newly admitted convalescent, Mr. Sullivan, also joined the phone sex squad. He was special in that we couldn't find his conversations amusing or exciting, merely pitiful. Operator. I jump in topless and giggling into the hot tub. I can't wait to get my hands on your giant erection hiding under the bubbles. Mr. Sullivan. Can I call you Anne? Operator. You can call me whatever you want. Mr. Sullivan. My wife's name was Anne. Operator. Anne is a pretty name. Mr. Sullivan. I shouldn't say was. She's alive, but in hospice care at my daughter's house. Operator. I'm sorry. Mr. Sullivan. She and her husband didn't feel they could take care of us both once her mother was diagnosed as terminal. I'm in a geriatric facility until there's a better plan. Operator. How awful. Mr. Sullivan. I'm worried they'll forget I'm here once my wife dies. Sometimes I want her to hurry up and die so I can get out of this place. It's one thing to imagine where you'll end your days, another thing to know. That bed, this chair. I can't keep listening to him, Angie said. It makes me sad. I'm curious, what kind of people dial phone sex hotlines nowadays in the age of internet porn, Wally said. Is it a bunch of grandpas who never got comfortable using a computer? No idea, Angie replied. Maybe it's nice to have somebody who's participating with you. What do you think our generation will be like when we get to that stage? Will dirty old men be jerking off to money shot montages instead of calling up asking women to behave like nymphomaniac nurses? These are the questions of our times. I had read a photo caption about elder care strategies tested around the country. One of them involved giving every resident a plushy unicorn they could cuddle and that would make vague horsey noises of delight. More than a few of the men and women bonded so intensely with their unicorns that they opened up to them as they never did with the staff or even their friends among the residents. The researchers knew this since there was a microphone hidden beneath the red tongue of each placid unicorn. They hypothesized that people in that late stage of life found it safer to reveal their deepest selves to an object, as it would never abandon them, never judge. Perhaps, they reasoned, the elderly would feel safer being attended by machines. I related this anecdote to my coworkers. That's great, Molly replied. I can't wait to walk in on Mr. Sullivan telling Sparkles that he's crying because he never got the proper opportunity to say farewell to his wife. You won't be there at all, Angie said. So then this jumps slightly forward a little bit. The narrator has found out that his girlfriend, he's just found out that his girlfriend is talking to this older man in the home, Mr. Rogers. So he's listening in on their conversation. Joe, I don't think he suspects. Besides, it's not like I'm doing anything wrong. I haven't cheated on him. Mr. Rogers, what is it that you love about him? Joe, I'm not actually sure. I think I fell in love with his hands. I thought it was nice when he told me that he took care of old people for a living. I liked imagining his hands at work, attending to needs. There was something kind about their clean nails. It feels like there's something missing in our relationship, though. He doesn't really want to delve into emotional stuff. I know his father bailed on his mom after she was diagnosed with ALS. They managed on their own for a few years until her condition forced them to hire a live-in nurse. We don't really have to go into all that. What do you want to talk about tonight? Mr. Rogers. I've been thinking a lot about a girl I used to know. One summer, I worked in the kitchen of a hotel in Maine, mostly washing dishes and drinking with the chefs. The family who owned the hotel also owned one of those corporate coffee brands. Their daughter was there on vacation from Radcliffe, and we got to know each other. Jill. Good for you. A fling with the boss's daughter. Mr. Rogers. It wasn't erotically intimate, but we spent a lot of time together. I want you to put yourself in her shoes, to talk to me like she did, to tell me your secrets. Jill. What do I say? I'm going to need a little more information. Mr. Rogers. Don't worry too much about the particulars. Do you have any alcohol? Jill. There's some in the minibar. Mr. Rogers. Pour yourself a glass. She had keys to the whole place and we'd steal bottles from the wine cellar. Jill. Okay, I've got some. Mr. Rogers. So start talking, Jill. Imagine I'm with you as we sit in a humid and empty kitchen. Jill. Well, my father wasn't around much. My mother was sleeping with some men. There are always a couple unfamiliar faces in the house. I remember I got home from school one afternoon, and when I went upstairs, my mom was riding this guy with the bedroom door wide open, and as she saw me there watching in the hallway, she paused, smiled, and waved, then started back up. Mr. Rogers. Did she talk to you about it? Jill. No, she didn't, but she often said it was healthy for children to know their parents are sexual beings. Mr. Rogers. I'd like to kiss you. Jill. You mean over the phone? Mr. Rogers. Yes, over the phone. Jill. I think I'd like to kiss you. I'll stop there. Thank you.
That's wild, Mary. Thank you. Thank you so much. I am so excited for your collection. It's amazing. And I also should mention that Mary started Lockdown Lit, which is, do you want to say a word about that? Like a Twitter account plus reading series at this point now to help people like Kimiko. Maybe you guys should connect, who have new books out, right?
Yeah, so it was wonderful, like back in March when like no one really knew how to do, like it was all the online events were just getting going. I sort of put like a call out on social media on Twitter saying like, if any group of authors want to like get together and collaborate on like how to do some online events or, you know, think about strategies for promotion, like maybe we could form like a Google group. And I thought maybe like a half a dozen people would be interested in just like, you know, emailing back and forth, but like over 80 people responded. It's saying they wanted to be part of this like sort of authors publishing during coronavirus group. And so, yes, there's now a great series that the literary magazine, Ziziva, and the Booksmith in San Francisco co-host and sponsor. It's every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, and that's going through July. So it would be wonderful if anybody's interested in checking out the authors talking. And we occasionally try to do some other things. There's also an Instagram account under Lockdown Lit, and we post a lot of, you know, updates and news from authors about their books, whether it's reviews or, you know, events they have coming up. So if you feel inclined to check it out, please do. So I'm being asked if there's a link. I'll put a link in the chat for everyone. So thanks for asking about that, Brian.
Of course, yes, it's really cool. Writers supporting writers as we must. So yeah, no, really, really, really very cool. So yeah, please check it out. And thank you again for a great reading and that a very, very cool initiative. All right, our final reader for the night is Omar Sakr. Omar is an award-winning poet born and raised in Western Sydney to Lebanese Muslim and Turkish Muslim migrants. He is the author of These Wild Houses and The Lost Arabs. In 2019, Omar was the recipient of the Edward Stanley Award for Poetry. And I believe this is perhaps the first time I'm hosting someone who is calling in live from Australia, which is pretty amazing. So please give Omar a warm welcome. Omar, the mic is yours.
Hi, I hope you can all hear me. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Yes, I'm the author of The Lost Arabs, which is available in America. Feels weird to promote that given everything that's going on, but that's what's happening. I am recording this. I'm coming to you from my home in Sydney. Saturday morning. It's really cold. I am living on the lands of the Wangal and Gadigal peoples. I want to acknowledge their elders, past and present, that their sovereignty was never ceded and that the horrors of colonization are ongoing. The poem that I have in Epiphany is a new poem which I wrote to reflect on a workshop that I often give on the politics and power of language. And I'll just read it for you now. I tell the students to write using only images. For example, a mile of sand glistens. Waves wash each grain blue. A small boy lies between the two. When I say a small boy, we all picture the same child, the one who died, the one closest to us. I fear the power of the image, how it changes nothing except myself, how it is never just an image, how the boy lives now under my bitten fingernails, how I live inside his grave, the great uncaring blue, womb of the world. I have been told to be more specific. Is the blue A sea, B, a chlorinated pool, C, an eye? I tell the students language paves the way to every death. Be careful with your rhetoric, especially when it feels right. We cannot be picturing the same child. We lack the imagination. We never saw him, not his life or his headline. We looked away to practice self-care. The timeline is too dark. Netflix and erasure, a deluge of icons and canned laughter and bright graphics and that baboom sound that lets us forget there have been many more children dead in riverbanks or swallowed by the ocean, unphotographed in the desert, blown to pieces in war zones or caged by we, the civilized West, land of the damned free. I tell the students to move me and hope they cannot hear the desperation. Teleportation is all any of us truly desire, to move and be moved in complete stillness, collapsing distances with a word, a shriven glance, an image of a poet, in this case a man, bearded, Arab, I mean kind of dusky, a faded, beaten sky, surrounded by students pale and dark and bored and solemn and on their phones because this is important and so not, and they're rickety, peeling tables, forming a square around the man, his vain efforts at peeling back the ocean, the seething black and green, the froth and heave of it, to cradle the boys and girls that never got to be so alive as to be bored by a poem, the gravid magic of rhythm given form, like La ilaha illallah wa Muhammad Rasulullah, and doing his best, I swear his best, to be professional, to not put his head on the damp, shifting sand and beg the waves to sunder. And that's it from me. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you, Omar. Thank you so much. Yeah, please give Omar some love and some energy back in the chat there. He just gave us so much. Thank you. Just want to kind of sit with that for a moment. I'm going to give opportunity for our Epiphany's guest poetry editor, Mahalo, to say a few words. Mahalo, we were trying to give you the mic earlier, but I think there was some technical difficulties, but I believe you are back in the room. Could you unmute yourself? She was back in the room.
She's joining from far away, so I think she was having some Wi-Fi issues.
All right.
She was here for part of the reading and said she really, really enjoyed it.
Cool. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. All right. Well, I know I'm mindful of everyone's time and we've been here for a while, but I did want to kind of give everyone an opportunity since we've got these amazing artists together to ask some questions. So if anyone in the audience has a question, now would be a great time to either raise your hand and I can give you the mic or put it in the chat. I know it's always intense to break the ice, so I'll give a moment and then I've got an icebreaker. I guess the thing that I was so curious about, and I guess I was just trying to think about how to, ask just a bit about from the author's perspective, seeing the call go out for for submissions for this issue with the theme of borders. So I thought I was curious to start with that word borders, and if you could I was curious to know what that word border means to you, and if you would like to talk a little bit about how it manifested in the work that appears in the issue. That is open to any of the authors. I see Omar thinking about it. Answers are a little bit like asking the first. It always feels like jumping into a cold lake, but it's comfortable once you get in. Who does anyone want to speak to that?
I mean, okay. Since I was speaking just a second ago, I'll try to answer the question. Yeah, look, I think I often write about borders, not explicitly in the sense of their crossings, but as the edges of countries, I guess. I often pick at what makes a country instead of a colony, for example. What is the differences between these words? What are we packing into this language? Particularly as the son of migrants. So this is a running theme in my work. I wanted to do something a little bit different when I was asked to send Mahalo some work on this. And yeah, I just think about how I carry that in my practice as a poet. And so I was thinking about the workshops that I give, yeah, the ways in which I guess some kind of ephemeral or a spectral version of borders manifests in our day-to-day lives. and how it often feels when I'm giving that workshop in a room, like they're manifesting in some way between me and the students. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I was doing there.
Thank you. Yeah, I love, it's so interesting to think about, right? That kind of the way in which we bring those designations, those borders into even classroom spaces with us, the way we bring those thoughts, those shapes everywhere with us. Thank you. Any of the other authors, or Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, when we were assembling this issue, it became clear pretty quickly how flexible the theme is and how many, interpretations one can have of it. There are literal borders. I mean, Vita's story is about migrants crossing the border, literally. And then, Mary's story, for instance, is about the borders of age and sexuality and telephones and airplanes crossing borders. I mean, there's sort of a flexibility there. Ghassan's story is about crossing a border literally from Lebanon to Israel. As I bring up the fiction writers because I was editing the work of the fiction writers, so their work is, of course, on my mind. Roy's pieces, of course, are about the border literally too. But I think there's other work in there that's really about borders metaphorically. And what's been interesting since we were sort of planning this back, and I say this in my editor's note in the beginning of the issue, we were planning this issue back in November, when our administration was putting children in cages at the US-Mexico border. And that was horrifying to us, and we were talking about that a lot. And, what can we do to participate in this discussion? What can we do to sort of add and expand to this discussion? Since November, the world has changed so much. Now we're thinking about other kinds of borders. We're thinking about borders between people, borders on our faces. We're thinking about the borders of literally our skin. We're thinking about the borders between life and death. I mean, we're thinking a lot about the borders between states and countries. And of course, I don't know, you can sort of riff on it for a long time. And I think that's actually sort of a danger of this kind of work as an editor. Like, I want it to be open and flexible. And I also don't want it to be it's like air and life, it is everything, because it's also sort of stricter and more nuanced and loaded than that as well. But my hope is that those of you who buy the issue, who are interested in reading the issue, walk away from it with, just some new ideas about what a border can be, and certainly having been entertained and inspired by the wonderful contributors that we have tonight.
Very cool. Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, I mean, I guess it is such a different world than when you guys were assembling the magazine. I guess unless there's another question from the audience, I guess I would just ask one final question, which is, I guess, for the authors who are present, is there anything that you're reading right now that's kind of giving you, I don't know, that's nourishing you or giving you some optimism or helping you? Do you want to point to anyone's work that's maybe helping you understand some of what's, I don't know, the many things that are happening in the world right now, from climate crisis to struggles for racial equality to dealing with the pandemic? Any recommendations for the audience here of people you'd like to point them to?
I just read a wonderful book, Anne Boyer's The Undying, and it's you mentioned like dealing with the pandemic. It has to deal with like her getting diagnosed with cancer and going through chemotherapy and dealing with her recovery. And it's extraordinarily powerful and beautiful. And I particularly love it when poets write prose. And difficult book in a lot of ways, to hear how like medicine in this country has like made it very difficult for her to recover from very debilitating illness, but also it's incredibly powerful and an incredibly amazing piece of work. So I recommend it highly.
Thank you. Roy, I see you put something up there from Coffee House Press. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so I am currently reading the Malevolent volume by Justin Philip Reed. And I think that this is something that relates to what Omar and Rachel have said, that the one size fits all danger of a theme like borders. And what I think it's really important too, and not just thinking about borders and thinking about COVID, but in this particular volume, I appreciate the ways in which Justin Philip Reed thinks about Blackness, specifically queer Blackness, and the way queer people, Black women, Black queer people have been treated, not just in the US, but globally, because at least for me, understanding the Black person helps me really understand things like borders, colonization, understanding indigeneity, as Omar brought up, indigeneity and Blackness. Those are two important ways for me to really understand why such a thing as a border, as a national border exists. So.
Thank you so much.
I love Justin Philip Reed's work. I haven't read the Malevolent volume yet, but I cannot wait. I'm very excited to get it. I've recently been reading the collected poems of Nikki Giovanni, which are just incredible. I mean, and also depressing. I always find it depressing when I read the brilliant works of academics or poets, intellectuals, whatever. That they published this work 50 years ago, and it feels like we're still having the same conversations. You know what I mean? We're still angry about the same things, and we're still hurt by the same things. And so in that aspect, it's depressing, but also really, really heartening as well. I've also been reading Philip Meader's Shrapnel Maps. Reginald Dwayne Betts' Felon poems have been absolutely incredible. And I think as well, thinking about prison and its impacts as well as a kind of related to the everyday borders in our lives, fits into this. And Birthright, I want to shout out Birthright by George Abraham. It's an incredible book. These are all incredible books, and I hope you check them out.
Thank you. That's an amazing reading list. Starting with Nikki Giovanni, awesome, beautiful work. Thank you guys so much. Is there any of the other authors who are still in the room? I know a couple people had to jump out.
Yeah. Oh,
you got it.
Yeah, I'd recommend Leila Lalami's The Other Americans. Leila Lalami, she is a Moroccan-American author. And The Other Americans, it's set in California. And what's so interesting about it is that it's composed of many first-person narratives, including Arab Americans, African Americans, and so it really deals with a lot of diverse people in Northern California and different racial tensions involved there. But I think what's so masterful about the book is just trying to capture these different voices coming from different socio-political backgrounds and making each voice distinct from one another. So I definitely recommend that. The Other Americans.
Very cool. Thank you so much. Cool. Well, I want to say a big thank you to Steve Chang and Roy Guzmán and Kimiko Hahn and Marcy Rae Henry and Vida James and Omar Sakr and Mary South and Ghassan Zeineddine. And I'm going to hand it over just to say goodnight to us back to Rachel Lyon. Rachel, you've got it.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Brian. Thanks to all the readers and all of the contributors who came tonight. I'm just very lucky to be able to do this work. A quick virtual applause for Becca McKay is here. She is one of our contributors. Lena Valencia. And ooh, it looks like I'm probably missing people. And if I am, I'm very sorry. But the work in this journal is really, I couldn't be luckier to get to work with all of you brilliant lights. So I don't want to keep you any longer. Thank you for joining us tonight. It was really a pleasure. I'm going to cheers you with my iced tea and take care and be well. Yeah, that's all I got.
Cool. Thanks, Rachel. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, LitHub. You will find archived video of this event on their website, hopefully tomorrow, but if not, on Monday. And stay healthy, stay optimistic, and keep reading books. Thank you guys so much. Yay, Epiphany. Have a great night, everybody. Cheers.